So, hi, Victor. Your last name is Orozco, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's my last name. Actually, pretty common in my country, but I think it's not so common in the world besides Spain and Colombia. I think that's where it is a common last name.
Okay. So, but was pronounced okay, right?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. What was your first computer?
Well, I think that my first computer was actually a Cyrix 486, I guess. Uh, I have like this particular situation when I was living with my parents and they live far, far away in the country. They are probably near to Mexico than to the actual capital city of Guatemala. But for my father's work, because he was an academic and also an engineer, totally different engineering area because he's from earth sciences. He bought this computer, this Cyrix, but he actually couldn't do anything with it because he wasn't capable of using Windows or that. But I think I've been lucky with that computer because that opened my mind in order to do software development.
Okay, but how it opened? So you started programming right away, or what is your the story with the computer? And Cyrix was like the cheaper
No,
in Intel, right? So Cyrix was like they were at the beginning. I remember there were different CPUs which were competitors to Intel, right?
yeah, the thing with Cyrix, I guess that they were like the third option. I think that actually they sold the patents for the x86 for to be a chipsets. I'm not sure if they are creating these chips, but at the time, Guatemala, my country, sometimes lags behind in the technology area, and the computers weren't so popular as they are now. So Cyrix was everywhere here in the country because, yeah, as you said, it was the Intel clone slash cheapest option. And that was like 2 or 3 years before the Pentium, I guess, because when Pentium came out to the market, Cyrix was really out.
Yeah, I remember Cyrix and then another CPU, which was came with no lower tact rate, but was supposed to be more powerful than Intel. I will have to think about this. So there were other CPUs, but interesting. So, but what you did with the computer?
Okay, well, the thing is that I recall that computer had like a piracy copy of Windows 3.11
Okay.
because piracy of Windows was a thing in that days. But the thing is, here in Guatemala, we have like this homebrew scene in which people created companies in order to build computers, and they tended to bundle software with DOS support, mostly games. And I recall that here in Guatemala, we have like this game. It was named Prehistoric 2. It wasn't so popular like Mario or Dangerous Dave, but I think that one person was, was the responsible of copying that game to any computers academy here in the country. And that game was everywhere. So I recall that my first contact with the computer was actually because my father was like trying to do something with the computer, and he found like this game with the a little caveman, requesting for food for his family. And actually, I try to play that game once a year because it remembers me my beginning is the computer. But at the beginning, it was only I used it for playing Prehistoric 2. But beyond that, I became like into this DOS gaming scene, the little scene here in Guatemala, in which we exchanged floppy disks with copies of Doom, Dangerous Dave. I recall having like 3 or 4 Dangerous Dave on my computer. And it was actually quite good because, my father have like this culture of not buying consoles for his kids. So I didn't grow up with a Nintendo or Sega or something like that. So that motivated me in order to look for more games in my computer. And in the end, it was actually a good decision because, as many people probably start in software development, I started to think, how do you create your games? Or how do you mod your games? So I remember that my first line of code was actually doing some mods for Prehistoric 2. I wasn't so sure that was programming at that time because I basically copied a little bit of patches and, I disassembled the program because I was too young when I was doing that. But I think that was the first time I did something with software development.
But if you disassemble a program, I mean, and you knew what to do, this is like crazy, right? So, I mean, how you disassemble the program and then how you knew what to do then, right?
Well, the thing is that I actually had an early contact with the internet because my father worked with, the thing is with international cooperation because he was in, personal development. It was like these international programs in which he received help, and most of the international organizations were actually very proactive in motivating the development of the country. And one of these actions that actually, I think, changed my life was that they gave to my father this course of what is internet. So I think that the internet started in Guatemala commercially in 1990,
Okay.
I think. And I was there. So actually, I did a lot of modding by consulting guides that were written like 5 or 6 years ago. So I was like into trying to do something to change a program, learning English in order to understand how to hack a program. And I think that was a key part of my life in which I get into this computer gaming modding.
Yeah, I mean, this is great because you were forced to learn English, and then you were forced to learn not to program, to use the computer, I would say, right? To disassemble stuff, to understand what programming means. And you were motivated just to change the game. So this was your motivation. You wanted to change the game, right?
Yeah, that was basically it because, this game, Prehistoric 2, had like this smart coding in which they like read particular code from the BIOS. So when you have like these passcodes in order to go to different levels, this was unique depending of the codes inside your BIOS. So no computer code was equal to another. So I actually did this modeling in order to understand what were the actual codes for the next and next levels because this Prehistoric 2 game is actually pretty hard, but in the end I made it to the final by seeing these cheats into this source code. But it is quite fun, because that's why I started to do some hacking on the computer games.
Prehistoric, right? Prehistoric?
Yeah. I think it's French. I think that the game is French, but it's not so popular besides, Latin America. I guess, I don't know why, but it is pretty popular in Latin America, especially for people studying something in computers between 98 and 99.
I will check it out. This made me curious. And I also never heard about Dangerous Dave. So it's also a game, right? Dangerous Dave, you said?
Yeah, that's also, yeah. Yeah, that's actually a set of games that the creators of Doom made before the actual creation of Doom and Quake. So it's like the beginnings of the, gaming software in computers because, we have like this eternal fight between consoles and PC gaming. But PC gaming was a thing after the consoles gaming, I guess. I didn't live all these years in that scene, but from my perspective, the PC gaming was actually inspired for the things that Nintendo and Sega did at the time. So I've read like this biography of Romero and John Carmack when they tell how they wanted to bring Mario to the PC gaming. But actually Nintendo said, well, we are not interested in PC gaming. So they created Dangerous Dave. That's actually a really good game. And actually, I recommend that everyone should play Dangerous Dave because
I will check it out.
Great games for the PC gaming. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So, and then you started to program, or what was the story then? So you managed, to read the BIOS, which is not trivial, I would say. What happened then?
Yeah, it wasn't trivial. So in one point of my life, at that gaming and modding scene, I decided that I wanted to create games. I actually never programmed a game entirely. I've just done hacking like in Minecraft lately. But the thing is, I wanted to know how things work. So I spoke with my father. And the thing is that we at Guatemala, we didn't have too many options in order to learn how to use a computer. So I remember that I went to a vacations course. It was a thing here in Guatemala when you have 2-3 months of vacations between different years. And I went to a software training that in the end it was like training how to use Windows. but the final part of that how to use Windows course actually covered how to develop software in FoxPro.
Wow.
FoxPro was really popular at
Yeah.
that time because I think that was the toolkit in order to develop enterprise applications here in Guatemala. And people was interested in learning FoxPro. So at the end of the course, in order to attract more students for the next modules, they will say, well, this is how you program a computer, and this is FoxPro. And in FoxPro, you could create these, interfaces. You could save the data, and you could copy the data files from FoxPro. So I actually wrote my first program in FoxPro. I wasn't so sure about programming because, the 4GL thing or this kind of generation of language is pretty different from the actual programming in other languages like Java, C++. But actually, I started first with FoxPro. And the next year, I actually took the second course in order to program in Pascal. I really enjoyed the experience in Pascal. I recall many good books in Pascal. And if Pascal was a thing today, I would recommend to start to software development in Pascal because it's actually pretty easy to pick. I think Pascal was the Python of that era because everybody was trying to understand a little bit of code with Pascal. At least that was my
Pascal and
experience.
then Delphi. This was the path, right? So at one point of time I used Pascal because and there was a Turbo Pascal, and I like the turbo name in the Pascal. So I was really interested in what it is. I was
I recall that people have like this Turbo Pascal thing and Borland Pascal. I never get the difference between these two. I know there is a difference, but for me, I think it was Turbo Pascal actually.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And the course was at the university, or where was it?
I think that the IT sector in Guatemala, it actually started with bootcamps. Bootcamps are a thing nowadays in which you will go in order to receive training. It doesn't matter if you have college or something. But the thing with Guatemala is that we have like this heavy influence from IBM because IBM, we are a country near to the United States. So IBM had like this whole influence over Mexico and Central America. And IBM did a lot of investment to dominate the Central American market. And, software engineering degrees or computer science degrees in the colleges were actually a thing. So the first software developers here in Guatemala were actually practitioners, people that had like this experience in electronics, or they were like starting to do math or physics, and they went to IBM bootcamps. And after that, that boosted a market all over the country in which these people that received training from IBM or other companies, but mostly IBM, they created like these computing academies. It was like they published in the newspapers, come here, come to learn the profession of the future. Colleges were actually just creating the degrees, but I went to one of these bootcamps. I was pretty young actually, and I think that my father had like this perception that I will go into computers one year or another. So he told me, okay, let's pay another course. And I actually received my first software development course when I was, I think, like 12, 13 maybe. So it was I was the youngest guy in there. I actually recall that some engineers, electronic engineers, were also receiving that course. And I was the kid in there because I was learning. It was actually pretty fun, because being the kids in this kind of area in which you only have professionals, it gave you some advantages because people say, "Oh, here is the kid, and this kid is learning how to do software development." So it was quite fun. Yeah. I actually recall that in learning with a lot of people and professionals, and this contact with the professionals inspired me to follow up in the engineering area because in there I discovered that engineering was a thing. And computer sciences training and degrees in the universities were starting to become popular,
And you enjoyed, the process of programming, or you just knew that it's something bigger and is good for you for the future, or you just really enjoyed, programming?
No, the thing is, I really enjoyed the programming area because I recall that when I wrote my first program in Pascal. When you wrote software in Pascal, it was like actually trying to speak in English. Pascal had this thing in which you have a low to verbosity, but at at that time, it was like trying to speak to the computer. I actually interpreted that at that age, that I was able to tell the computer what to do. And that felt really powerful, man. So when I did my first programs, I started to copy it on the floppy disk, and, things that nowadays are like, well, that makes sense. When I did my first program at the Computing Academy, I came to my house with a floppy disk, and I put that in my computer, and it compiled and ran again. It was okay. Now I can create programs. I could actually speak with the computers. This is powerful, and that basically was how I started in software development.
Yeah, but because back then the computers were like newer, right? They were exciting stuff, new, and felt somehow powerful. And if you manage, to control them, this was a great feeling. This also I remember, because first, if there was a computer, it was an expensive thing which was untouchable. So it was something this only smart people can use it. This was my perception. And then if you manage, to program that, it was a nice feeling actually. Okay, I'm able to to speak to the machine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next workshop was about FoxPro. So you were advanced programmer already with Turbo Pascal, right? There was a FoxPro and Turbo Pascal. What happened then?
Well, the thing with this kind of bootcamps academies is that they created like this whole market of computers technicians. So in the beginning, I was in the belief that I will become eventually to a computer technician. I will have like my computers workshop in which I will, buy and sell some parts. And that was my initial dream. But the thing is that when I started in this area, here in Guatemala, we have like this division between middle high school, in which you could actually do the regular high school programs, like in the US, in which they receive basically all of the sciences available in order to prepare you for the college. And you have technical careers in which you go to high school in order to pursue a profession. And my profession, or at least what I think it was my profession at that time, I went to technical school in order to learn how to fix and repair computers. I think that that put me in a position in which I was starting to understand my context, because, in many ways, I have like this privilege to have early contact with computing, because when I went to this technical middle high school, let's name it like that, most of the people that went into the program actually didn't have a computer at their homes. So they went to learn how to use computers first. The second year, we learned how to actually build a PC, how to select the parts. It was a whole different era, because Windows Millennium was a thing. Windows XP was just released. And when I was to the following year, they say, well, we are starting the advanced level. So we are going to do software development. And we were learning BASIC, actually. So my third language was BASIC, and the final language what I learned at that school, it was C++. I must recognize that my professors weren't so good at it, because, C++ is a whole different level. Yeah. They didn't knew that. So they told us, well, C++ is a thing. You should learn C++. But when we ask, what is a pointer? How do you do this? The reference of the pointer, what are sign it out to sign it variables? Yeah. It was like everybody was exploiting their minds. But I think that course in particular focused on BASIC, because BASIC had like this whole market of Central America. I think that Visual Basic, at least, is still pretty popular. There is a lot of software actually growth in Visual Basic, and it will remain there in BASIC. So that's where I was supposed to follow software development. And my mindset at that time was, well, Microsoft is the leader of the world. I need to learn Microsoft tools. So I think Microsoft.NET was just released also. And I had like this mindset, I need to go to college in order to learn Microsoft.NET tools, which nowadays is pretty, it's pretty ironic, but that was my mindset at the time.
Why ironic? I mean, this is not that bad, right? It was .NET and C#. You could switch easily to Java if you wanted. So, not a big problem, right?
Yeah, the thing is that my professor didn't know about C#. They knew that C# was a thing, but Visual Basic was the king. It's like, we know that it exists, but it sounds like
Okay.
the US use C#. We use Basic,
Okay.
and you have to learn Basic. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. But I think this Visual Basic .NET was very similar to C#, right? So, I mean,
Well, actually, .NET was a thing, but we learned in Visual Basic 6. I guess that was the last version before the .NET era.
Okay,
So
okay.
we were like Visual Basic 6 developers.
And you started to study computer science to learn .NET, right?
Yeah. The thing is that nowadays is pretty different. But in Guatemala, not so many people goes to college. I think like between 2 to 3% of the people able to be in the edge to have the previous degree actually goes to college. So like we don't have like a strong mathematics and physics and this kind of science backgrounds in the middle school, because not everybody is going to engineering classes. And my father, I spoke with my father when he said, well, if you want to pursue software engineering, I don't know a thing about it, because that's a whole different area for me. I could speak with people that could tell you about the experience, where to look for how to obtain this degree. And I was 16. Yeah, I recall I was 16 when I have to travel to the capital city of Guatemala. So I left my home at 16 in order to pursue a computer science degree. Here in Guatemala, we had this thing that you could skip some levels of formal education if you have the capacity. I skipped to 2 years actually. Wow. So when I was 16, I went to live alone to attend college. And I have like this opportunity in order to go to public college that in Guatemala, not so many people goes to college, but if you make it to the public university, you basically pay like 9 to 10 euros per year. So it is pretty cheap if you actually go into it.
Okay.
And that's how I started in computer science.
So you were good at school?
Yeah, I think I was good at school because I wasn't good at sports, I guess. So I had to like this particular interest in games, in software development, and I became good at school. So that's why, despite being from a remote region here in Guatemala, I actually make it and made the cut for the engineering program here in Guatemala.
So you learned a lot at school, or you were just good without learning?
No, I actually learned a lot because of my mom, because my mom was a public teacher. So she was a teacher, and she spends a lot of time teaching us how to read, how to do complex mathematics. So I think it was a thing that my mom did to me, because she was like this mindset. My mom actually never went to college, and she said, I probably won't go to college anytime in my life, but I want my kids to go. So I'll do my best in order to make them good in mathematics and whatever I suppose they have to learn in university.
Great. So this was you could you saved 2 years of your life, or save. Or
yeah,
it depends, right?
Yeah, to the professors, actually, I think I saved 2 years for them too.
Great. And you enjoyed the college? You were the youngest again,
well,
maybe.
I was the youngest again in college. The thing with college is that you have like these people coming all over the Guatemala and actually some other countries here in Central America, because despite being a public college, I'm not sure if you are into public colleges in Latin America, but public colleges in Latin America tend to have this reputation of being good for sciences, but actually very political focused. So it was an interesting experience at the beginning, because you have like these classes about Guatemalan history, about the Cold War. It is a particular situation here in the public colleges in Latin America. I've seen the same pattern in Brazil. I've seen the same pattern in Colombia, at least. But what I actually enjoyed in college, it was like this opportunity to meet other people really interested in computer science. Because when I was in high school, people wanted to learn a little bit in order to get a job. But I think that my experience in college was actually pretty different, because people was actually doing a thing in order to learn how to develop software. But the first year was pretty difficult for me because, as I said, most of the people were in the region where I lived have like this whole different level in computer science. So when I went to the degree, it actually was pretty hard to me because I didn't have enough knowledge of mathematics and software development in order to do it for, at least good for the first year. So the first year was actually pretty tough for me, and I have to study a lot in order to make my way in and actually survive to the computer science program.
Yeah, which is normal. Even during my study was tough. The first year is always hard in computer science because lots of the foundation and stuff is not trivial.
Yeah, that's actually when you remember that years, I actually recall having difficulties with this kind of actually easy things to do in mathematics, because when you start to learn and study more and more mathematics courses, you actually see, well, that was pretty easy, but I didn't have enough knowledge to do it. But in the end, it all worked for me.
Yeah, for me, in my study, the math professor said the first day, like, we will do everything crazy fast, but from the beginning. And I said, okay, this is my opportunity from the beginning. So, I mean, if it's really true, so I can do it, right? And then I recently found my, the scripts from math scripts, and they were actually, this was crazy stuff we did. I read about super planes or whatever it is. I mean, this was actually crazy stuff we did back then. But for me, it was fun. The first time at the university. Before then, it was a little bit boring. But at the university, I was University of Applied Science. So it was not a real university. It's more like a pragmatic university. So in Germany, we have two parts or two categories of university. The real university, which is more theoretical, and the University of Applied Science, which is more about programming, I would say. But it was fun. And where you studied? In which city?
Well, I started, my actual city is named San Pedro. Most of the cities here in Guatemala and other Latin American countries are actually named in similar ways, San Pedro, San Marcos, which means saint something, same saint, other thing. We have a lot of saint cities. And I started in that city, but I did college entirely in Guatemala City, because we are not very creative with names, I guess, because the country is Guatemala. The region is actually the Guatemala region, and the city is Guatemala City. So I am in Guatemala.
Yeah, very
that's
good.
how it works.
Guatemala power of 3, right? So.
Yeah, yeah.
And you started programming immediately at the university, or was it like more theoretical stuff? And
now, the thing with the public universities here in Guatemala is that actually they don't have like this enough capacity to receive so much students. And to be fair, there are so many students that start like these engineering programs, but I think that just 20 to 30% survive to the first year. So the first year is mostly focused on mathematics, history classes, physics, these complementary areas, in order to, prepare you for the things to come. But actually, I think they also work as unintentional filters in which people just say, well, this is not for me. I want to seek for other major. But the first year was actually focused mostly on mathematics. That was the main focus.
And what was the first programming language you learned at the university?
Okay, the thing is, do you remember when I said that IBM has this huge influence in Guatemala? Okay, the thing is that the industry as a whole evolved a lot in Guatemala. But my impression, is that Microsoft did a lot of investments too. So I think like between 2000 to 2004, 2005, there was a switch in the ecosystem in which many of the universities and colleges decided, well, we need to teach Microsoft technology. So I think that the differential factor in my college is that one of the actual directors of the computer science program went to do his master's at Carnegie Mellon. So he lived in the US for 2-3 years, I remember. And when he came back to Guatemala, he said, well, I think we need to change, guys, because I met this technology in Carnegie Mellon, and this technology was Java. So he decided and he spoke with the IBM representatives and to say, what do you think about Java? And IBM said, well, Java is the present, man. And many banking systems here in Guatemala were actually being rewritten in Java. But most of the people that was working in Java actually never met Java in college. So I came into university in this transition because he came back to Guatemala like in 2002, 2003. And I started college in 2005. So I was part of this experiment slash, modernization of this syllabus. And when he decided that Java will be the programming language for the people, he actually have like this mindset that one day Guatemala will be a nearshore software provider for the US. That actually became true because the main industry in Guatemala nowadays is to provide software external services to US companies. And one man decision, I think I recognize that my whole career in software development from that point to nowadays, it was his decision because he said, we need to teach Java to these guys because it doesn't matter if you, after that, go to Guatemalan industry that is basically Visual Basic and possibly C# in the future. If they learn Java, they will actually be able to pick any software development language, which actually became true because many of the professionals that studied in that era, many of us still remain in Java for that year, from that year.
So you started with Java at the university, actually. So you wanted to learn .NET, and instead you learned Java.
Yeah.
In 2005?
Yeah,
so you started with Java 5?
Yeah, I started with Java 5, actually.
So it was already great, with annotations and everything. So it was like more than Java.
Yeah, the thing is that we don't have, the Guatemalan IT industry don't have like this experience in Java. Because at the time, English wasn't a thing in colleges because we were like very, very behind if compared to other countries in order to speak in English. So most of the literature of that, I recall the Details book, which is pretty famous, I guess. I recall that the only translation for the Details book, which was the official book to learn Java at college, it was Java 4, 1.4. So I started actually with Java 1.4. And after that, mostly by, a different decision, I did the jump to Java 5, but the official Java was actually Java 4 in a Java 5 era. Kind of the situation is happening with Java 8, Java 11, Java 17.
And who was the guy again who decided that the university should switch to Java? Was it like, the head of the university, or who was it?
Well, he was the head of the computer science program. But the thing is that, the thing is with software engineering in Guatemala, if compared to other engineering areas like construction, electrics, and whatever, it is nowadays still is a small section of the engineering area because we don't have like a computer science program in a science faculty. We have a computer science program in engineering programs. So it is mostly focused on computer science for software engineering. And when he came back, he basically had like this clean canvas in which he had all the power to decide this will be the next thing that people will be learning here in Guatemala. And he actually what I recall at college at that level is that the people that already had companies here in Guatemala, they were thinking at the time that Java wasn't a good decision because they said, well, man, why are you spending the time of the student doing Java if everything in Guatemala is .NET basically? But he said, well, nowadays it's .NET, but if we want to be competitive and if we dream with an industry in which Guatemala could be a provider for the US, we have to create this diversification because Linux is being a thing too, because Linux wasn't a thing at that era too. And so he gave us like the freedom, but mostly, the resources to learn Java. Because at the same time, like he had like this vision in which he did like contacts with the embassy of India. And he told, hey, we are doing this in the computer science program. We are actually trying to impact the whole industry. Do you have any idea how could you help us? Because India like has this whole offshoring, outsourcing culture, and we want to do that in Guatemala. So they actually attended the request, and they said we could actually contact with some, enterprises, with some companies in India to see if we could do together something with the country. And I recall that in 2006, Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, actually signed a collaboration agreement with my university. And they said, well, TCS uses Java. And we also have like this idea that we are starting operations in Mexico, that is pretty close to Guatemala. And we think that we will be needing in the future software developers that are capable of doing things besides .NET. So we are actually paying a bootcamp program here inside the university. And you actually had like this option to learn Java from people that was actually pretty capable of Java. Because I didn't learn Java with my college professor. I learned Java with these guys from TCS. And that's actually also a game changer in my career, because in that bootcamp in particular, I remember learning all of the contents from the Java certification. I actually became Java certified when I was in college.
Which is
and
also
I actually
hard.
learned
The first certification program was really, really hard. What I remember was the Sun Certified Java Programmer. I don't know whether you had the opportunity to pass that. But I did the very early certs. And back then, it was not even, there was multiple choice. But in my course, you had no idea how many of the answers are right. Whether they are 3 of 5 or 1 or 2. So it was actually pretty challenging, the entire certification.
No, the thing is, besides challenging, it was expensive, because I remember that certification test here in Guatemala was like 3 or 4 times the minimum salary at the time. So it was pretty expensive. And as a student, I wouldn't be able to pay it. But this program had like this training. Well, we could put the trainers, and they also contacted some microsystems at the time. And some said we could actually do it. And they gave us for free the certification tests. And most of the people that, it was actually a pretty huge opportunity, because at the time I wasn't aware how difficult it was and how meaningful will it be in my first job. Because when I went to my first job, I actually didn't have like this test of Java, because I was certified and Java wasn't a thing in Guatemala. So when I say, well, I have a Java certification, by who? Well, I am certified by Sun Microsystems. I have 21 years and I am also Java certified. So I got my first job just in the first interview. But at the time, I wasn't aware how powerful these kind of things could be in your first job. Nowadays, I'm not doing so much certifications, but at the time, it was a game changer.
So what was your first serious Java program, regardless whether it was commercial or leisure one? So what your first program you wrote in Java?
Well, the thing is, when I was in college, the free software movement was starting in Guatemala. And as I said, the college had like this freedom of do whatever you think in whatever language. If you learn how to do software, we don't care actually which programming language are you proficient. So the free software movement in Guatemala, I could actually relate the software movement in my country with the software user groups, the Linux user groups in my university. So when we started the Linux user group at my university, we have like these first events. It was pretty amateur. We have like this huge festival in Guatemala that is actually a Latin American festival of free software, in which you basically go with your computer and people like me installed a copy of Linux. It was a thing back then. So when I went into this Linux user group, I received a lot of information besides the information I was receiving at college, because the Linux user groups were actually conformed by professionals, students, people from other degrees, especially mathematics and physics. And I met there my first job opportunity, because I was explaining how to do things with NetBeans Rich Client platform. Because I was interested in doing desktop software development. And I was saying, well, if you want to do things with Swing, you should check out NetBeans RCP, because you could do a lot of things and your programs will be just like NetBeans. And my actual opportunity came from my first presentation, and they told me, do you actually learn Java? Yes, I do it. So I went to work with, I recall my first serious program was a database for data for human rights. And it was created with struts. So my first Java framework, which I actually recall being actually pretty good, was struts. Struts was a thing back then here in Guatemala.
Why you started with NetBeans and not Visual Edge for Java or something, or Eclipse from IBM? So this is an interesting part.
Well, the thing is with NetBeans is that when I was at college, some had like this huge movement on we are becoming a software services company, and we are like pushing a lot MySQL. We're pushing a lot free Java. Free Java wasn't a thing when I started, but in the middle of the college, Java became free. And some microsystem had like these open source university meetups in which you register yourself or a group in your college, and they actually sent DVDs with software because internet access was a little bit difficult at that time. So I recall receiving a DVD with NetBeans. It had MySQL, Solaris. So when I saw NetBeans, because the official IDE for my college was actually JCreator. I'm not sure if that's a thing nowadays, but that was the official IDE. Yeah. So when I saw NetBeans, and it was NetBeans is free software, and I was able to run it on Linux, it was huge for me because I'd say, well, this is a whole different level of software development. I remember that I struggled with the RAM memory in my computer at that time, but when I saw NetBeans, I think, well, this will be the future in Java software development. So that's why I started with NetBeans and NetBeans RCP.
Okay, so you knew Java, and then per accident you found the DVD and installed NetBeans, and you like NetBeans, right? So this was the path to NetBeans.
I don't know, many of the things that happened at that time were actually by accident, because it was like, hey, do you have like this thing? I recall that we have like this exchange student from Panama, and he came with a CD with Gentoo Linux. And he said, Gentoo Linux is the future, but you have to compile everything. And it was like this fun / geeky activity in which we went, a night or two in order to hack or try to do our best in order to do our first open source contribution. And that's when we like got these whole resources in order to do Java development, in my case, NetBeans.
And then you became interested in the UI user interface. And then, of course, NetBeans was very capable. There was the Matisse visual editor, so you could just drag and drop the UI, I guess, right? And also Eclipse NetBeans RCP. And so you deliver a talk, and then you got a job with Struts. So you used the NetBeans to program Struts apps, right?
Yeah, that was my first job. It was
and
actually
what was the backend server?
Job.
Was it Tomcat or what was it? Or Glassfish?
It was actually Sun Java application server.
Sun Java application server. This is actually great because this was the predecessor of Glassfish. So there was the Sun Java application server, and then Glassfish came out. Interesting. So, but this was already pretty late for Sun Glassfish application server. You said 2005, 2006, so there was Glassfish already around, I think, right?
Yeah, it was. Glassfish was actually a thing, but Java was starting in my country at that years. So, like, if you worked for IBM or consulting for IBM, you will be probably using IBM technology. Yeah. But besides IBM supported companies, Java wasn't a thing. So the first, the groundbreaking companies started with the resources that they had available in Spanish, and most of the Spanish resources were actually lagging behind us, as you said. So that's why many companies started with some Java application server when Glassfish was a thing.
Oh, interesting. I think it was identical to some Java server, but open sourced. So what is the next project then? I mean, the structures are already huge. So you had to learn to know web, and you have to know Java and database. So you had to learn to know a lot to be effective with struts, right?
Yeah, the thing is that I must recognize that the bootcamp from TCS did a lot of difference in my career, because in that bootcamp I spent basically 2 years besides the computer science degree. So I had to do my extra in order to do my computer science assignments, my regular courses to my degree. And I recall that we have like this crazy schedule at college in which you receive classes between 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. and after that 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. So we have like this gap between these two schedules, and the TCS program was, well, if you want to receive these courses, you have to stay here in college. You have to do whatever you have to do in order to stay here in college. You won't receive any points of your degree. This is for free, and you have to speak in English. So, like this bootcamp attracted a lot of people, like probably between 4,000 to 5,000 people, I guess. But in the end, we were just like, 15 students at most.
Okay.
So from the investment point of view, I think it was a failure. It was a failure because the program had like this intention of create a lot of opportunities for a lot of people. But when the instructor started to speak in English, all the people was, well, man, this is not for me, because English is very difficult, especially if you come from a different background, let's say not so privileged background here in Guatemala. But, that's where the games made it handy, because I actually learned English in order to understand games. So
very good.
My English is not the best,
That's very
but
good.
I actually had like this enough level in order to do the bootcamps. So I did the bootcamps. And, an interesting fact is that Central America has just 3 Java champions. 2 of the Java champions were actually in that bootcamp. So I knew the other Java champion from Guatemala. He's Cesar. I met him at that bootcamp. So we started together to do Java development in there.
Cesar, whose last name?
Cesar Hernandez. I think he works still for Tommy Tribe.
Okay. Interesting.
He's at the Null Pointers band.
Null Pointers band. Okay. So, but you had no time to play instruments, of course, with your background. So it was absolutely no time. What was the next application? So the first was Struts. What was the next one?
Well, the thing is that this project had like this. It was a consultancy actually. I wasn't aware of that until the consultancy finished. But my boss at the time told me, well, we are looking for other projects, but if you want to continue to work, because we are not sure about your economical situation, it was good actually, but she told me we could actually do a reference for you. You are a good software developer, so we could do a reference letter for you, and you could get software development for sure. So she wrote a reference letter. And after that, she contacted like these people from the IT sector in Guatemala. And my second job was actually as an enterprise developer in another company. My boss at the time, he spent a lot of years doing IT and telecom work. And he was like starting his consultancy company. So he had like this idea in which people will be using applications at their phones. And he did like this partnership with Blackberry. So that company was the first Blackberry representative here in Guatemala. And that's when I went into Java Micro Edition. So I did for 2 or 3 years Java Micro Edition development. And when I went to that work, I started knowing a lot of Java. So I really enjoyed doing applications for Blackberry, because it was a thing with Java Micro Edition. It was a more capable Java Micro Edition, let's say, if compared to, other phones. But I started to work a lot in the enterprise sector. So I actually did a lot of backend work now with Glassfish, because Glassfish was starting to be popular here in Guatemala. I must say that Glassfish is still popular in Guatemala, pretty popular. And we started doing Java Micro Edition applications with Glassfish. So that's when I became in love with Java Enterprise Edition. I really enjoyed doing software development in that platform.
Interesting. This was Java EE 6 or 7 already, right? I guess.
Yeah, it was Java EE 6.
6. Okay. When was it? Which year, roughly?
It was 2011, 2012, in which I decided that.
What happens then? Then BlackBerry was no more that popular, I would say, after that. So what happened then?
Yeah. No, the thing is, BlackBerry was popular in 2010 when I started,
exactly.
And we started like this warehouse and delivery applications. But I recall that my boss went to a conference in San Francisco, and when he came back to Guatemala, he said, we actually have to regrow all of our applications because, something is about to change because he attended the Apple conference.
Oh.
So when he went to the Apple conference, he said, the iPhone will be a thing. And what I learned in the conference is that Google is also doing a thing with the smartphones. So we will be probably doing a lot in the mobile space in the following years. But Java Micro Edition is no more. That was his vision, and he was actually right about it because when Android started to came up to the market, he actually went back to the US and bought a lot of phones for us. And he said, well, we will be betting on Android. And if you already know Java, you could do it on Android. And so we started with Android at that time. So for that years, I was a mobile developer until 2012, which I took a very different path in life.
So after that, you still developer, right? Or from 2012?
No, the thing with 2012 is that I wanted to do a different thing because, I was really young when I finished college. I finished college at 21. Mm-hmm. So I was young. And I met people that actually do masters or PhDs outside Guatemala. Despite having difficulties in order to find work here in Guatemala, they spoke a lot why you should go and study abroad. So I had this intention in order to study abroad. And that's where I decided to go to Brazil because Brazil was a powerful country. It still is a powerful country, but, Brazil had this opportunity window in which they did a lot of great things in software, in technology, in that time, at that time. So I applied for many scholarships and I actually got a scholarship to live in Brazil and do research works there. So I lived from 2012 to 2014 in Brazil. That's why you always see me with the Brazilian guys because I speak Portuguese with them. I try to speak with them in order to not forget the Portuguese.
Ah, okay. So so you spent some time in Brazil and you also program Java, of course. Well, I mean, you have to, right?
Well, actually, I didn't do Java at that time because I was part of security research group. And this security research group, this security research group was trying to do something with machine learning. So Apache Spark and Hadoop were starting. And at that time, at least Spark had a lot of code in Scala. Mm-hmm. So I went with my Java background and I spent 2 years doing research with Scala.
And you enjoyed Java, Scala actually? So I'm really curious because, so what was your opinion about Scala?
Well,
now, seriously.
Well, this kind of technologies have this hype, and at the time, functional Java wasn't a thing. So, as many of the people those know with Kotlin that they say, well, Kotlin is killing Java. I was actually thinking that the Scala will kill Java eventually, which didn't happen. And actually, I think was the right thing to do and the right thing to think at that time. But I really enjoyed the Scala. But with the years, Scala became really complex. And if you are not a full-time Scala developer, at least that's my opinion, you will be having this hard time in order to read the Scala code. Because, I have this opinion that the code, the source code is actually a way to speak between developers. Exactly. And if you speak clearly with Java code, and if you do it with the Scala code, the other persons in the room have to be very capable of doing functional programming in order to understand Scala code, which not happens too often, at least not in my region or my projects, which I've not seen so many Scala projects since then.
Yeah, what I didn't like about Scala is first, it's getting better, but the compilation was too slow for me. And the second thing is what I do in Java. If I forgot JavaDoc or whatever, I click on the class and look at the source code, and I know what's going on. I tried to do with Scala and had no idea what's going on, right?
Yeah,
so if you
I had
click,
that impression too.
And then I asked someone at the conference whether someone can explain me, and couldn't find enough developers who also understood the source code. And then I asked again, and then they made the distinction between library developers and application developers, and I say, okay, then it's not for me. I mean, why? What's going on here? Okay. So you were a Java developer, Scala developer for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And then what
For
happened?
that
So
2
you
years,
came back to Java. Back in 2015, you moved back to Guatemala and to Java, right?
Yeah, the thing with I moved back to Guatemala is that I wasn't sure of wanted to be a researcher and professor. I am actually a college professor nowadays, which is ironic too.
Interesting.
But yeah, at the time I wasn't sure if I wanted to do a PhD because in Guatemala you basically need a master or experience to be college professor. But in Brazil, Chile, Mexico, you actually need a PhD. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure about it, so I came back to Guatemala. And when I came back to Guatemala, I spoke with some guys in the IT industry because I wasn't sure if I will be spending a lot of months in Guatemala or I will be going back again to study abroad. But when I came back to Guatemala, a friend of mine told me, hey, I know you like a lot of Java. People is doing interesting things in software development. Why we don't do something interesting? Let's do a consultancy work if in the meantime, if you decide to go abroad again. And that was 7 years ago. Okay. So when I came back to Guatemala, I started work as contractor. And with the time I started to work as contractor, after that we founded the company. And since then I've been a Java developer. I came back to Java because, despite liking a lot Scala, Java 8 was starting to take shape. Mm-hmm. So Java will be becoming functional eventually. Yes. And besides that, the decision of the professor or the director of the computer science degrees actually impacted a lot in the Guatemalan market. So I think that nowadays, if you want to find a good software developer here in Guatemala, you will be betting on Java developers or at least JavaScript developers. So when we decided which will be our technology stack, it was pretty clear that in order to find the human resources, the capital to do it, and to do it, this balance between economy and technical features, Java was the right decision. And it was the decision that we took. And, we actually have 7 years in the market. So it was the decision that made us to survive and thrive here in Guatemala.
Yes, actually great. And so you which projects you worked on? Enterprise projects again?
Yeah, mostly enterprise projects, because when I came back to Guatemala, I actually worked in a lot of, applications. There is a particular market in IT, which here in Guatemala is called aggregators. I'm not sure if that's the right name in other countries, but these aggregators create SMS promotions in which you receive a message in which find you the love of your life, mm-hmm. or bet on the game of life. And most of these aggregators, they worked also with Java. So we started to do a lot of consultancy work for them, but the SMS market will be eventually dying. So when we foresaw that the SMS wasn't a thing anymore, they started to launch promotional applications for Android. So we started doing betting applications for phone or betting applications on the market that people downloaded and played a little bit with this kind of aggregators. And with that, we entered in the enterprise sector in Guatemala, because one thing is to know Java, and a whole different thing is to actually be able to provide services with the guarantees that all of these have to have in order to be considered at least by a bank, mm-hmm. by a telecommunications area. But that's where we started. We started with for phone applications for Android. After that, for phone applications for iOS. And when people saw the results of our applications, we went back to the backend and enterprise with Java.
What you did in the backend? Which technologies you used?
Well, back then and now, we mostly focused on Jakarta EE and Java EE, and eventually MicroProfile. The decision was because when these bootcamps were actually based on Java EE, mm-hmm. These bootcamp people actually became professors in another universities, professors in their own bootcamps. Mm-hmm. So the Java EE base stack disseminated a lot in the country. And mm-hmm. nowadays, I think Spring and Spring Boot is actually popular too in Central America. but Java EE was pretty popular. So we decided, well, if we want to find Java developers ready for the market, we have to bet on Java EE. And this was actually the right bet because, the thing with Java EE, and that's really my opinion, is that once you get what's the point of being standards based, you actually have like this capability to do a lot of evolution. So when we started, Java EE7 was a thing. We have lived the transition between Java EE7, Java EE8, Java EE9, Jakarta, MicroProfile. And for our needs, Java EE is actually pretty good because we have like this opportunity to have projects with one implementation. One client requires the Red Hat based stack, or the client said, no, we work with Glassfish. Another say, well, we are Oracle based. And Java EE for consultancy makes a lot of sense for that because we could cover the whole spectrum of the Java enterprise sector with that.
Yeah, I'm also a consultant. For me, made also a great sense because I didn't have to learn all the application servers. I just actually only learned Jakarta, Java EE or J2E back then, and was able to cover lots of implementations, which I only had to learn the diffs between the vendors. So I actually didn't knew about that you are also a Jakarta and MicroProfile guy. I had no idea about that. Interesting. And you're still doing, but now you're a professor, right? So you stopped then developing, and when you started to teach, or how you became a professor?
No, well, the thing is that in Guatemala, most of the college professors are actually lecturers, or the name, I think the literal translation is practitioners, in which you are actually in the industry. And they gave you like this opportunity of being a part-time professor or just a lecturer in order. So I'm actually a lecturer. I think that's the right translation. So I started to being a professor because, one condition of my scholarship was to came back to my country and help. Do something, because they basically gave you a whole degree for free. They covered it like transportation costs, housing, the actually cost of living in Brazil. So it was actually a pretty good opportunity. But the condition was, please come back to your country. You have to do something for your society. So ideally, if you go to a college and be a professor, that will be the right way to pay your scholarship. I was required to be a lecturer at least for 2 years. And I started being a lecturer and I never stopped basically. So I've been a lecturer at the university since 2014, 2015. And that's why I'm
still programming with MicroProfile in Jakarta EE?
Yeah, the thing is that nowadays I'm mostly a software architect, this fancy title that everybody uses. Now, the thing is that at some point I have to grow because, I have to teach to people in order to be good at something. So I found a partner in the business. He's basically in charge of all the administration stuff, the economy stuff and that. And I am actually most like a tech lead. Nowadays I'm basically preparing architectures, scaffolds, archetypes, training teams here in Guatemala and at least other countries here in Central America and Latin America. But yeah, I actually like to code and I still code a lot. So I'm not creating the whole systems, but from time to time.
Anymore. So, but yeah.
Yeah. But I still work as a tech lead. So that's why I got very interested in Java user groups. So when I came back to Guatemala, we restarted the Java user group in order to create this ecosystem. And actually, at least as far as I know, the Java user group in Guatemala is the oldest user group in general that's still alive in the country.
Oh, great. And I see behind you the Duke Choice Award. The Duke Choice Award. Yeah. How you got it? For what you got the Duke Choice Award?
Okay, the thing is that when I came back to Guatemala, I had like this opportunity of receiving a lot of options in my life. Options being opportunities to study, opportunities to learn English, but that is not the reality of the majority of people here. So we decided that like a hobby, like a way to spend our weekends. We did like this bootcamp series. It all started like, well, let's do a Java bootcamp. And after that, we did another bootcamp in another college. Well, I think that after the 6th or 7th presentation, it was, I think, we are doing a Java tour in Guatemala. So we did like this project with some colleges here in Guatemala, in which said, here we are the Java user group of Guatemala. We are professionals with different backgrounds. There is people that has been developing Java since the early 2000s, and we want to do something for society. Well, we want to teach Java to everyone that wanna learn it. And we did like this bootcamp series. So we created basic training material for Java, which you could actually deliver, or you could contact us in order to say, hey, I want the Java tour here in Guatemala, which we named the Duke's Adventures, because my first Java one was at 2014, I guess, and my first dream was to have a Duke plush. So in each of these presentations over Guatemala, Guatemala is a very beautiful country. You have volcanoes, you have rivers, you have like these different areas and weathers. We carry out the plush and we took pictures. Oh, here the Guatemala tour is here in this region of the country. The Guatemala tour here is at the mountains. We actually did it for a year and a half, maybe. But we created like this Java scene in Guatemala, because before that Java wasn't so powerful, at least what it is nowadays. And that's where I got it. So I recall that Bruno Souza, you know it, everybody knows Bruno. I met him in Brazil because I went to a conference of him in Brazil and we spoke a little bit. And we followed each other on, I think it was Facebook. I'm not sure if it was Twitter or Facebook, but Bruno wrote me, hey man, what's the thing that are you doing? Or why do you have Duke plush everywhere in your country? So I explained to him, well, Bruno, we are doing like this bootcamp series in Guatemala. We are trying to give opportunity to the people because, despite being a powerful IT country compared to other countries, we have still lagging behind a lot in software engineering, mathematics, and whatever. And we did it for fun. And he said, well, that's Duke's choice material, man. And I was like, I don't know, man. We are doing this for fun. It is a project. We have like a university sponsor and we are doing it for fun. But I'm not sure if that's Duke's choice award material. And he told me, well, here, take this form, fill out the things and just wait. I think it's Duke's choice material, but just try it. And in the end, we got the Duke's choice in the educational sector. So we were an educational project and we won it in 2016.
Yeah, well deserved, I would say. Yeah, this is how it should be, right? And Bruno is great. So we had already 2 episodes with Bruno on AXFM podcast. So yeah, great guy with the Brazilian flag. You need, the Guatemalan flag on your back, like Bruno. This will be your thing.
Yeah, I think so. I will carry out in the. Hopefully in the next Java conference, which I could attend.
So do you have now your own company, what I understood, right? Or
yeah.
What's the name of the company?
Yeah, nowadays I'm running. The company is actually pretty regional, but the name is Navenik, which is a combined set of words of knowledge and cloud. So it's knowledge in the cloud, but it's in a Mayan translation. So we were actually like, yeah. Because, in Guatemala, we have like 23, 24, I'm not sure, different regional languages. So people here have like this Proto-Mayan language in which 23 different languages derive all over the country. But we are actually a small country. So we are actually smaller than Uruguay, I guess. But we have like this diversity and we appreciate a lot. You will find a lot of Mayan reference, culture or the publicity, the marketing. So we decided we are not so creative. So let's just combine some Mayan words and see if some of these words work, and they actually work it. So that's how we got our name. We combined knowledge and cloud, and that made sense for us. In the end, people always actually ask us, hey, what the name means, but everybody likes it.
Yeah.
So I think it was
actually what I also like, the reference to Mayan language. So, so Maya is like, I don't know. I was also, as teenager, very curious about the Mayan culture and whatever. So also like a little bit, mysterious thing. And And which part of cloud? So what are you doing? This is like enterprise project in the clouds, and which clouds are you covering? So AWS or private clouds or what?
Now, the thing is that we are mostly, nowadays, we have 3 lines of work because we are good at software. We are not so good at our created products, so we are basically consultants.
Yeah.
But the thing we work the most, I think it is, nowadays is DevOps, mostly doing migrations from traditional Java to cloud native Java. We work, a whole range of clouds. I know that mostly here in Guatemala, the most popular clouds are AWS and Azure, but we work also with Oracle Cloud. So I think that that's our 3 strongest clouds. But nowadays we do a lot of on-premise work too, because, I'm not sure if that's the situation in other countries, but in Guatemala, many of the government institutions, they have to actually run on premise still. They are creating like their private clouds, but still on premise. So nowadays we are doing a lot of cloud native Java
On premise.
and
OpenShift
Kubernetes implementation.
OpenShift, I guess, right?
Yeah, we do mostly OpenShift and Kubernetes vanilla, but it's an interesting part of the consultancy work because you are actually learning new things. For instance, this year I actually spent a lot of time doing private clouds for institutional governments here in Guatemala. After that, we did like these trainings. They have like this whole back-ending traditional Glassfish deployment, and they want to scale because they have the need to do it. So we are, empowering these institutional organizations to go to different Java micro frameworks, like mostly Quarkus, Payara Micro. We do a lot of Payara Micro too. So it is really fun, I actually enjoy my work doing that.
Yeah, I really like OpenShift actually. So OpenShift is a really convenient flavor of Kubernetes. And regarding Payara Micro and Glassfish, are you actually aware of Payara Cloud?
Yeah, we are not into the Payara Cloud thing because, at least my impression is that today is still a closed cloud because you have to go to like the invitation or I think it is in beta.
Yeah.
But we are very interested in what we will be doing Payara in the next months. So I'm also a huge Payara fan. I actually had like this opportunity to meet the Payara guys. We sold a little bit of support of Payara here from them to Guatemalan institutions. So Payara is a thing here,
Okay. And you mentioned, the migrations that in your opinion, Java EE was really good for consultancy and migrations. This was also my opinion. So projects which I supported, I was thinking Java E5 timeframe. So what I did, a lot of migration from J2 1.4 to Java E5, and then you can simplify a lot because then we got annotations and you could delete all the old deployment descriptors. But the cool story is this Java E5 came out, I would say 2005, 2006, something around that, and back the code to now is almost the same. So you could delete maybe an interface, and we got at inject. So the migration was pretty smooth. And now it comes. So if you go to AWS, you can take Quarkus. You mentioned Quarkus, and package. If you're a little bit lucky, the old application is AWS Lambda. So what we have in some projects, we actually picking the old code and shipping this as serverless AWS Lambda, or go to AWS Fargate or Azure App Service. You mentioned Azure or Azure Functions, but this is the same code. This is the crazy stuff. You can go from old, really 15 years old code base, and with a little tweaks, make the cutting edge Lambda serverless function. And the next thing is, if you pick Quarkus and run it as Lambda on JVM, it even runs faster than JavaScript or Python. So you can even save money with the old technology, which is great, right?
Yeah, the thing is that when I do this kind of migrations, most of the companies that we support are actually this kind of situation. I recall doing support for a company that has presence in all over Central America. And they were like doing this migration from Glassfish, and they were doing from Glassfish to OpenShift. And I recall the training because that training was pretty special for them. When I'd say, well, what's your actual knowledge? And they have like this huge experience in Java EE 7, and they wanted to go to Spring. I have nothing against Spring. I really also like Spring too. But I told them, you could actually do microservices too with Jakarta EE, and we actually have a lot of implementations. So we spent like a month or month and a half doing just proofs of concepts on what they will have to do in order to do the cloud native migration. But the impression in the faces of the people when they were able to do microservices with their actual knowledge was huge. That was like 3 years ago, I guess. Yeah, it was 3 years ago. And nowadays they are running all over Quarkus and Helidon and Payara Micro. And the knowledge they have, and they have been developing a lot in Java, they actually took advantage of it in order to be productive and to do a successful migration. And it was pretty cool because when you see actually the actual product in which they are nowadays attending all over Central America with that application that they migrated many of the codes they had in the early Java EE 7, it was actually pretty successful, a pretty successful project.
Yeah, actually recently someone asked me to help with the migration from Payara to Quarkus and to the cloud. So there was on-premise to the cloud deployment. And I said, okay, why would you like to migrate? I mean, if it runs fine on Payara, you will maybe save a few megs of RAM, but it will cost you about the same, roughly the same. And they said, okay, good point. And after proof of concept, it just runs happily as Payara on AWS Fargate without any problems. So, I mean, you don't have container as a container. Yeah, sure, Quarkus will be a little bit smaller, but you shouldn't forget that the applications also have caches, and it's not about the overhead. It's just about the entire application, and this is not a huge thing. So it was a nice chat with you, and if you like, I would like to re-invite you back, and if you like, we could talk about your Mayan projects, right? So it seems like you're doing exactly the same what I am doing. So it was really interesting to see, and we could speak about cloud migration or whatever. Just would be a fun conversation, I would say.
Yeah, I think I am a huge fan of your podcast because when I started in Java EE, you actually have a lot of resources in Java EE back then. So it was really an honor to be here now.
Oh, because, really? I didn't know that. You actually you invited me to a conference, or you are part of the conference, and then I pinged you. So interesting, because I saw you at Java 1, I think, and I was okay. I'm really curious what you are doing, and then I invited you here, and I had no idea that you are actually doing Jakarta and MicroProfile, which is great. Yeah,
the thing is, we have like the biggest conference in Central America, so you are more than welcome the next year probably. So
I was actually there online, right? I was. This was.
Yeah, you were offline.
Yeah, online.
Yeah, you were the previous year, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Yeah, sure. Always, online works well because there is no time, to travel. I don't have to spend any time to travel. I'm also a consultant as you, a lot to do, but yeah, perfect. So thank you, and if you like, I will re-invite you back.
Okay, thank you, Adam. For sure, I
forgot about that. Where can people find you? What is your Twitter account? What is the name of the company? And so forth. Now you have to promote yourself. It's not that easy,
Okay. My Twitter is pretty easy. It's Tuxtor, like Tux the penguin, and Tor like Victor. That's the whole history of my nickname. My nickname is everywhere, but it's the combination of Tux because I like it a lot, Linux too.
Yeah.
And the last part of my name. So if you Google Tuxtor, I will be there probably doing something in the Java space.
And your company name again?
Okay, my company is Nabenik. You could Google us too. And we are mostly focused on Latin America, especially Mexico and Central America. But we have like a lot of things interesting things and histories to help everybody in the Java space.
And how many employees do you have roughly?
Roughly, I think we are a small company. We have like 15 employees. That's my last count.
15 is this is I think Android started with 5 developers or something, right? So you can achieve a lot.
Yeah, we do a lot of work nowadays, but we are small, but we are very focused and specialized in what we do. So
yeah, cool. Thank you.